Alright, let's dive into something that's got the space community buzzing right now. NASA just announced a new target launch date for Artemis II, the historic moon mission, and it's set for April 1st. Yes, April Fool's Day. Personally, I think that's either the boldest or the most awkward timing ever, but hey, if they're confident enough to launch on that day, I'm all ears. What makes this really interesting is the unanimous vote during the Flight Readiness Review, FRR, which basically means everyone's on board with the risks. But here's where it gets fascinating. NASA isn't sharing specific risk numbers this time, like the probability of loss of mission or loss of crew. In my opinion, that's a huge shift from the space shuttle era, where those figures were front and center. So, what's changed? And why the secrecy now? From my perspective, this move feels like NASA is trying to balance transparency with pragmatism. John Honeycutt, the Artemis II mission management team chair, mentioned that these risk estimates often involve guesswork, especially with limited data from the SLS rocket's first flight. I get it, the Artemis II mission is only the second time this rocket is flying, so there's not much historical data to lean on. But here's the thing, if you take a step back and think about it, this lack of concrete numbers could either mean they're being extra cautious or that they're not entirely sure what to expect. One thing that immediately stands out is how Honeycutt said, "I wouldn't actually put a number on it." That's a pretty bold statement for a mission this high stakes. What many people don't realize is that the heat shield on the Orion spacecraft has been a major point of contention. After the Artemis I test flight in 2022, the heat shield came back with divots and cracks. NASA spent over a year trying to figure out why, and now they're saying they've got it under control by adjusting the return trajectory. But critics are skeptical, and honestly, I am too. If you ask me, altering the trajectory feels like a band-aid solution. What this really suggests is that NASA is confident in their internal consensus, but are they being overly optimistic? I mean, the astronauts themselves were part of the FRR, tuning in to make sure the heat shield issue was nailed down. That tells me they're just as concerned as we are. Here's where it gets even more intriguing. The SLS rocket has had its fair share of setbacks lately. Hydrogen leaks, helium flow issues, it's been a rollercoaster. And now, NASA is skipping another wet dress rehearsal to preserve the fuel tanks. Personally, I think that's a calculated risk, but it also feels like they're cutting corners to stick to the April launch window. What makes this really interesting is the timing. They're moving the rocket back to the launch pad on March 19th, just weeks before the target date. If you ask me, that's a tight schedule, especially with the technical challenges they've faced. But let's zoom out for a second. This mission isn't just about getting back to the moon, it's about the bigger picture. Artemis II is a stepping stone to future deep space exploration, and the risks they're taking now could shape how we approach space travel for decades. In my opinion, the real question isn't whether they'll launch on April 1st, but whether they're rushing it. Are they prioritizing the timeline over safety? Or is this just the cost of pushing boundaries? What this really suggests is that space exploration is always a gamble, and NASA is betting big this time. So, here's my closing thought. As we watch this mission unfold, let's not just focus on the launch date or the technical hurdles. Let's think about what it means for humanity to take these risks. Are we ready for the challenges that come with exploring the unknown? And more importantly, are we willing to accept the consequences? Personally, I'm both excited and nervous, and I can't wait to see how this story unfolds. What about you? Let me know in the comments below.